Do you know what it feels like to watch taillights disappear into darkness? Realizing the people you loved just threw you away like trash? I stood there on that empty Tennessee road, my cardigan pulled tight against the October wind, watching my son Paul's van speed away. Monica's laugh still rang in my ears, sharp and cruel through the open window. My suitcase sat beside me on the gravel shoulder, and I couldn't stop shaking. Not from the cold, but from the truth settling into my bones. They left me. My own son and his wife abandoned me on a dark highway like I was nothing. I looked down at my purse, fumbling for my phone, and that's when I saw it. The receipt from the travel agency, folded neatly in the side pocket. My credit card number printed clearly at the bottom. I had paid for this entire family trip. Every hotel room, every meal, every single gas station stop. $743. My pension money. Money I saved carefully each month from what my late husband Gerald left me. And they dumped me on the side of the road anyway. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments section where you're listening to my revenge story from. I want to know how far it has reached. I refused to cry. Gerald always said tears were for after the battle, not during it. So I picked up my suitcase, even though my arthritis made my fingers ache, and started walking toward the faint lights I could see down the road. Each step felt heavy, but I kept moving. Cars passed me, their headlights sweeping over me like searchlights, but nobody stopped. Why would they? I was just an old woman in a cardigan, probably looking half crazy dragging luggage along the highway at 9 o'clock at night. After maybe 20 minutes, my legs started trembling. I had to stop and rest on my suitcase, right there on the shoulder. That's when I heard the rumble of a big truck slowing down behind me. The air brakes hissed and a door opened. A man's voice called out, kind and concerned. "Ma'am, you all right out here?" I looked up to see a middle-aged man with a trucker's cap and a weathered face that reminded me of Gerald's brother. His name was Carl, he told me later. Carl helped me into his truck, lifting my suitcase like it weighed nothing. The cab smelled like coffee and pine air freshener. He didn't ask too many questions at first, just offered me a bottle of water from his cooler and turned up the heat. "Nearest town's about 15 miles up," he said, glancing at me with concerned eyes. "I can drop you at the motel there if that helps." I nodded, trying to steady my voice. We got separated. I lied, the words tasting bitter. "My family and I'm sure they'll realize soon and come back." Carl didn't say anything, but I saw something in his expression. He knew I was lying. He'd probably seen plenty of abandoned people in his years on the road. We drove in comfortable silence for a while, just the hum of the engine and the darkness rushing past the windows. He told me about his daughter who ran a real estate office in Nashville, about his wife who passed 3 years ago from cancer. I told him about Gerald, about our 42 years together before his heart gave out. Somehow, talking to this stranger felt easier than talking to my own son had felt in years. The Pinewood Motel looked tired under its flickering neon sign, but it was clean enough. Carl insisted on carrying my suitcase to the office, and wouldn't take no for an answer. The clerk was a young woman with kind eyes and purple-streaked hair. "Room for the night?" she asked, then glanced at her computer screen as I handed over my credit card. "Oh, same card as before, ma'am?" My stomach dropped. "What do you mean before?" She looked confused. "This card was used here 2 nights ago. 2 rooms, checked out this morning." I felt the room tilt slightly. Paul and Monica had stopped here on the way up to the mountains. They used my card. Of course they did. They'd been using my card for everything. I was so stupid. "Yes," I managed to say. "Same card." After Carl left with a gentle pat on my shoulder and his daughter's business card pressed into my hand, I sat on the motel bed and finally let myself feel it. The betrayal. The humiliation. But underneath all that pain, something else was growing. Something cold and clear. Resolve. I took a bus home the next morning, arriving at my house in Millbrook 2 days before Paul and Monica were due back. The house felt different when I walked in, like it belonged to a stranger. Everything looked the same. The floral couch Gerald and I picked out 20 years ago. The wedding photos on the mantel. The kitchen table where I'd fed Paul breakfast before school for 18 years. But it all felt hollow now. I dropped my suitcase in the bedroom and walked to the living room, stopping in front of Gerald's portrait. We'd had it done for our 40th anniversary, just 6 months before he died. He looked so handsome in his blue suit, that gentle smile on his face. "I won't let them twist what we built," I whispered to the photographer, my fingers touching the frame. "I promise you, Gerald." I spent those 2 days preparing. Not crying, not breaking down, but thinking. Planning. I went through our old papers, the ones Gerald kept so carefully organized in his study. And that's when I found it. The certificate of deposit we'd forgotten about, opened 30 years ago for Paul's education. He never needed it because he got scholarships. Gerald meant to close it, but never did. With interest, it was worth $42,000. I called Howard Jenkins on Monday morning. He'd been our family lawyer for 25 years, handled Gerald's will, and helped us set up the trust. "Evelyn," he said warmly when his secretary put me through. "How are you? How was the family trip?" That word, family, almost broke my composure. But I kept my voice steady. "Howard, I need to see you. Today if possible. There are some things I need to understand about my assets." He heard something in my tone because he cleared his schedule for 2 o'clock. In his office, surrounded by law books and the smell of old paper, I told him everything. The abandonment, the credit card, the pattern I'd been blind to for so long. Howard listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker. When I finished, he pulled out a thick folder. "Evelyn, let me remind you of something important. The house is in your name only. Gerald left it to you, not jointly to Paul. The investment accounts, the savings, even that workshop behind the house that Paul uses, all registered to you." He paused, looking at me over his reading glasses. "You have more power here than you realize." When Paul and Monica returned on Wednesday, I was making dinner like nothing had happened. I heard their car pull up, and heard Monica's sharp voice complaining about traffic. Paul came in first, looking uncomfortable, not meeting my eyes. "Hey, Mom," he said, dropping his duffel bag by the door. "Sorry we didn't wait for you at that rest stop. Monica said you wanted to stay longer to use the restroom, and when we came back, you were gone." The lie was so smooth, so practiced. Monica appeared behind him, her smile too bright. "We drove around for hours looking for you, Evelyn. We were so worried. You really shouldn't wander off like that." I stirred the pot of stew, keeping my back to them. "My mistake," I said softly. "I must have gotten confused about where you parked." I felt Monica's satisfaction radiating across the kitchen. She thought I was weak, senile, easy to manipulate. Good. Let her think that. Over dinner, I played my part perfectly. I fumbled with my fork, forgot the name of the town we visited. Let Monica correct me with that condescending patience. Paul looked relieved. But I watched them. I really watched them. The way Monica kept checking her phone with increasing anxiety. The way Paul's hands shook slightly when he reached for his water glass. The next morning, while Paul was at work and Monica was out job hunting, she'd been between opportunities for 8 months now, I went through the house. Not snooping exactly, but looking with new eyes. In their bedroom, I found the stack of unpaid bills shoved in Monica's nightstand drawer. Credit cards maxed out. 2 notices from collection agencies. A letter from Paul's boss about unauthorized personal use of company equipment. My son was in trouble. They both were. And they'd been planning to use me as their life raft. In Gerald's study, I opened the old cedar chest where he kept his important papers. Underneath our marriage certificate and Paul's baby book, I found it. The ledger where Gerald tracked every penny we ever saved. His handwriting, careful and precise, filled page after page. And there, on the last page, he'd written before his stroke a note. For Evelyn, for whatever brings her joy. She sacrificed enough. Tears blurred my vision, but I blinked them away. I had work to do. I called the bank that held the certificate of deposit. The process to close it and transfer the funds would take 3 business days. I could wait 3 more days. Sunday afternoon, I was tending my roses when a truck pulled up. Carl climbed out, looking embarrassed. Mrs. Evelyn, he said, walking up my driveway with his cap in his hands. I hope you don't mind. I was passing through Millbrook on a delivery, and I still had your address from the motel receipt you dropped. He held out the folded paper. Thought you might want this back. I invited him for tea, grateful for the kindness of a stranger that my own family couldn't show. We sat on my porch, and I told him more of the truth this time. Not all of it, but enough. He listened, his weathered face sympathetic. My daughter, Rebecca, he said slowly. She's a good person. Runs a real estate office in Nashville like I mentioned. If you ever need anything, advice about property, legal stuff with family, she knows folks who can help. He left me with Rebecca's card and something more valuable. The reminder that there were still decent people in the world. That night, Paul announced at dinner that he was thinking about helping me manage my finances better. You're getting older, Mom, he said, not meeting my eyes. It might be easier if I had access to your accounts. Just to help. Make sure bills get paid on time. I called Howard first thing Monday morning. Paul wants access to my accounts, I told him. What do I do? Howard's response was immediate. Nothing. Don't give him anything. In fact, I'm going to have our assistant draw up documents explicitly removing any implied power of attorney, just as a precaution. By Wednesday, the certificate of deposit money sat safely in a new account at a different bank, one Paul and Monica knew nothing about. $42,000. My war chest, I called it privately. That same week, something shifted in the house. Monica's anxiety became obvious. She snapped at Paul constantly. I overheard them arguing in their bedroom one night, her shrill voice carrying through the walls. We're drowning, Paul. The credit cards are all maxed. We have 60 days before they start taking legal action. Your mother is sitting on a gold mine, and you're too weak to do what needs to be done. Paul's response was too quiet to hear, but Monica's laugh was bitter. Fine. Then I'll handle it myself. The next morning, Monica was all sunshine and sweetness. She made me breakfast, asked about my doctor's appointments, even offered to help me organize my closet. The trap was being set. I smiled and thanked her, playing the grateful, confused old woman. And quietly, I called Howard again. That Saturday, I hired a landscaping company to redo my front garden. It was something Gerald and I had always planned but never got around to. The crew arrived Monday morning with their equipment and noise. Monica came storming out of the house. Evelyn, what is this? You didn't mention anything about landscaping. I blinked up at her innocently from my garden chair. Didn't I? Oh, I'm so sorry, dear. I must have forgotten to tell you. Gerald always wanted the garden redone. What Monica didn't know was that I'd also quietly contacted the county building inspector, mentioning that I was concerned about some renovations done to the house a few years ago. Renovations Monica had pushed Paul into doing without permits. The inspector came Tuesday afternoon. I watched from the kitchen window as he walked around the property, taking notes. On Friday, the citation arrived by mail. $4,000 in fines for unpermitted work. Monica opened the letter at the kitchen table, and her face went white. "This is ridiculous," she hissed. "These renovations were done 2 years ago." Paul looked panicked. "Maybe we can appeal?" "With what money?" Monica slammed the letter down. "We don't have $4,000. I kept peeling potatoes, my back to them, my face hidden. But inside, I felt the first spark of something like satisfaction. That night, alone in my room, I took out my good stationery, the set Gerald gave me on our 20th anniversary. I wrote him a letter, my handwriting shaky but determined. "My dearest Gerald," I began. "They think I'm weak. They think grief and age have made me easy to discard. But you taught me better than that. You showed me that real strength is quiet, that justice doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. I'm fixing what they broke. Not with cruelty but with truth. I'm protecting what we built together. And when it's done, I'll make sure your legacy helps people who actually deserve it. Watch over me, my love. I'm fighting the good fight." I folded the letter carefully and tucked it behind his portrait, where nobody would think to look. It became my anchor, my reminder of why I was doing this. Over the next week, I paid attention to everything. I noticed Paul coming home later and later, smelling like cheap beer. I noticed Monica spending hours on the phone, her voice pleading, desperate. She was calling family, friends, anyone who might lend them money. Nobody was helping. One evening, I found Monica in Gerald's study, going through the filing cabinet. She jumped when I appeared in the doorway. "Oh, Evelyn. I was just looking for some old tax documents. For Paul." The trap was closing. I knew Monica would push harder soon, and I was right. Saturday morning, Paul sat me down at the kitchen table. Monica stood behind him, her hand on his shoulder, directing him like a puppeteer. "Mom," Paul began, his voice rehearsed. "Monica and I need to talk to you about something important. We've noticed you've been forgetting things lately. Missing bills, getting confused about dates." I said nothing, just looked at him with those wide, confused eyes I'd practiced in the mirror. "We think it might be good if I took over managing your accounts. Just to help. To make sure nothing gets missed." I let the silence stretch, watching Monica's fingers tighten on Paul's shoulder. Then I said softly, "If you think that's best, dear." The relief on their faces was obvious. Monica actually smiled. They thought they'd won. Monday morning, I called Howard. "They're moving. What should I do?" His response was swift. By Tuesday afternoon, my accounts were frozen with new security protocols. Paul would need not just my signature, but identification documents and authorization from the bank manager, who happened to be Howard's cousin. Wednesday, Paul tried to use his ATM card to access my account like he'd done dozens of times before. It was declined. He tried again. Declined. By the time he got home, his face was flushed with panic and anger. "What did you do?" Monica's shriek echoed through the house. I was in the living room, working on a crossword puzzle, deliberately taking my time before looking up. "What do you mean, dear?" Paul stood in the doorway, his hands shaking. "My card was declined at the grocery store. Your account, something's wrong with it." Monica pushed past him, her face twisted with rage. "You changed something. You locked us out." I set down my puzzle slowly. The bank suggested new security measures. At my age, they said it was safer. I'm sorry if that's inconvenient. Inconvenient. Monica's voice rose higher. We have bills to pay, Evelyn. Responsibilities. How are we supposed to manage if you keep forgetting to give us access? I looked at her directly then, letting just a hint of steel show through my confused old lady act. Manage what, exactly? Your responsibilities or mine? The silence was thick with tension. Paul looked between us, confused, sensing the shift but not understanding it. Monica's eyes narrowed. She was beginning to realize I wasn't as helpless as she thought. That night, I heard them arguing viciously. Glass broke. Doors slammed. And I sat in my room, writing in the journal I'd started keeping. Every manipulation. Every lie. Every dollar they'd taken. Evidence, methodically recorded. Howard had taught me that much. Always document everything. 2 weeks later, I scheduled a family meeting. I told Paul and Monica I wanted to discuss my estate planning, to make sure everything was in order. Howard came to the house, which was unusual, and that made them nervous. We sat around the dining room table, the same table where Paul had done his homework as a child. Howard opened his briefcase and pulled out documents. Evelyn has asked me to help her establish a charitable trust, he announced. Monica's fork clattered against her plate. A what? A trust. Howard continued smoothly. Mrs. Morrison has decided to donate the bulk of her estate to establish educational scholarships for elderly learners returning to school. The house will be sold upon her passing, with proceeds going to the trust. I watched Paul's face drain of color. Monica's mouth opened and closed like a fish. But Paul started. There's more, I said quietly, my voice steady. I'm also establishing immediate boundaries. This house is mine. I've decided I'd like to live alone again. You both have 30 days to find your own place. Monica shot to her feet. You can't do this. We have nowhere to go. We're family. I met her eyes. Family doesn't abandon each other on dark roads, Monica. Family doesn't steal and lie and manipulate. Paul looked like I'd struck him. Mom, what are you talking about? The trip, I said simply. I know what you did. The Millbrook Community Charity Gala happens every spring. A big event where the town's wealthiest gather to show off their generosity. I'd gone with Gerald for years, but hadn't attended since he died. This year, I accepted the invitation. I wore my best dress, the navy one Gerald always said made my eyes sparkle. Mayor Patricia Chun. No, wait, Mayor Patricia Hartley gave the opening speech, and then she turned to me. This year's guest of honor exemplifies the spirit of giving. Evelyn Morrison has established a scholarship fund that will help hundreds of elderly community members pursue education. Please welcome her to the stage. The applause was genuine. I stood at that podium and told them about Gerald, about believing in second chances, about how learning never stops. In the audience, Monica sat with a frozen smile, her face red. I saw neighbors whispering behind their hands, looking at her. The woman who thought I was senile. The woman who'd spread rumors about my declining mental state to justify taking control. Later, several people approached me. Evelyn, I had no idea you were doing such wonderful work, Mrs. Patterson said. Monica told us you were having memory problems. I smiled gently. I remember everything that matters, Helen. The message was clear. The entire town now knew the truth. I found out about Monica's attempted sale of my house by accident, or what Monica thought was an accident. Rebecca, Carl's daughter, called me on a Tuesday afternoon. Mrs. Morrison? This is Rebecca Chun. My father gave me your number. I hope that's okay. Of course, dear. How is Carl? He's fine. But I'm calling about something unusual. A woman named Monica Morrison contacted my real estate office about listing your property. She claimed to have power of attorney. My blood went cold, then hot. She doesn't have any such thing. I thought as much. My father told me a bit about your situation. That's why I'm calling. She's meeting with another agent from my office tomorrow at 3. I thought you might want to know. The next day, I arrived at my own house at exactly 3:15. A strange woman in a business suit stood in my living room with Monica, both of them discussing staging and market value. They both jumped when I walked in. Evelyn, Monica stammered. I looked at the real estate agent. I'm Evelyn Morrison. This is my house. I never authorized any sale. The agent's face went pale. Mrs. Morrison said. Mrs. Morrison lied. I pulled out my deed, which Howard had advised me to keep on hand. Please leave. After the agent fled, I turned to Monica. Pack your things. Today. You can't throw us out. 30 days, I said quietly. That's what I gave you. It's been 31. Paul came to me that night alone. Monica had gone to her sister's house, and he sat at my kitchen table looking like the scared little boy who used to confess about broken windows and failed tests. Mom, he said, his voice cracking. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I poured him tea, the same way I had 1,000 times before. But I didn't sit down. I didn't make it comfortable. What exactly are you sorry for, Paul? All of it. The trip. Leaving you. Using your money. I was weak. Monica said we were drowning, and I panicked and I let her. He stopped, realizing how that sounded. You let her do what? Abuse your mother? Steal from me? Plan to take me home? The words hung between us. I thought, he said finally, that you'd always be here. That you'd always take care of me like you did when I was young. I didn't think about what that cost you. I sat down then, feeling suddenly tired. Your father and I sacrificed everything to give you opportunities. We didn't expect you to pay us back. But we also didn't expect you to throw us away. Paul cried. Real tears, not manipulation. How do I fix this? You earn it back, I said. Trust isn't given, Paul. It's built. Brick by brick, day by day. You start by being honest. By standing up. By being the man your father believed you could be. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I didn't forgive him that night. But I didn't close the door completely either. Winter came early that year. By November, Monica had left Paul completely, moving to Florida with a man she met online. Paul lost his job in December. The company found out about the equipment he'd been selling on the side. He moved into a cheap apartment on the edge of town, and I heard through neighbors that he was struggling. I didn't call. I didn't visit. I let him feel what I had felt. Then, on a cold January night, my phone rang at 11. Paul's number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mom. His voice was hollow, distant. Wind noise in the background. Where are you? Highway 40. My car broke down. It's so cold, Mom. I don't have money for a tow truck. The irony wasn't lost on me. I sat there in my warm house, in my flannel nightgown, holding the phone. I could hang up. I could let him figure it out himself. God knows he deserved it. But Gerald's voice echoed in my head. You're better than your pain, Evelyn. That's what makes you strong. I grabbed my coat and keys. Stay on the phone with me. I'm coming. I drove the dark highway, following his location on my phone, and found him standing beside his dead car. He looked thin, defeated. When he got in my warm truck, wrapped in the blanket I kept in the back. The same blanket I'd carried that night he abandoned me. He started crying. I understand now, he whispered. What I did to you. How it felt. I didn't say anything. I just drove him back to my house. We sat at my kitchen table until dawn, and I did something I'd been preparing for weeks. I pulled out a thick notebook and slid it across to him. What's this? Paul asked. Every receipt. Every withdrawal. Every lie. Everything you and Monica took from me over the last 3 years. I watched him open it, saw his face go pale as he flipped through pages. $700 for a business trip, that was actually a vacation. $300 for car repairs, that never happened. Hundreds of small transactions, always from my account, never repaid. I want you to read it, I said quietly. Not to shame you, but so you understand. Trust isn't just about the big betrayals, Paul. It's about all the small ways you made me feel like I didn't matter. He read in silence, tears dropping onto the pages. When he finished, he looked at me with devastated eyes. How do I ever make this right? You start, I said, by being honest. With yourself, with me, with everyone. You face what you did. And then you work every single day to be better. Paul moved back into his apartment, but something had changed. He started attending AA meetings, even though the drinking was a symptom, not the disease. He got a job at a hardware store, humble work that paid minimum wage. And every Friday he came to my house and did chores. Fixed leaky faucets. Painted the fence. Cleaned the gutters. Not because I asked, but because he needed to. March brought news that made me pause. Monica had been arrested in Florida for financial fraud. She'd run the same scam on her new boyfriend that she'd tried with me, but he'd pressed charges. The police found evidence of a pattern going back years. Fake power of attorney documents, forged signatures, manipulated elderly relatives. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me just felt sad. Paul took the news hard, blaming himself for not seeing who she really was. You loved her, I told him gently. Love makes us blind sometimes. You saw through her. I had practice, I said. Life taught me to look closer. That same week, the scholarship fund I'd established gave out its first awards. 5 elderly students, all going back to school after decades away. One was a 68-year-old woman who wanted to study art history. Another was a 72-year-old man pursuing a nursing degree. At the ceremony, they thanked me with tears in their eyes, calling me their inspiration. Paul came to the ceremony, sitting in the back. Afterward, he approached me carefully. Dad would be so proud of you, Mom. He'd be proud of you too, I said, for trying to change. Paul handed me an envelope. It's only $300. But it's the start. I'm paying you back. Everything I took. It might take years, but I will. I took the envelope, and for the first time in months, I hugged my son. Not forgiveness yet, but hope. Spring turned to summer, and I sold the big house. It was time. Too many painful memories mixed with the good ones. I bought a small cottage near Cedar Lake, the place where Gerald taught Paul to fish when he was 7. The cottage had 2 bedrooms, a cozy kitchen, and a porch that overlooked the water. Peace lived in that house from the moment I moved in. I hired a part-time caretaker named Diane, a kind woman in her 50s who made excellent lemon cake and didn't mind comfortable silences. We'd sit on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun set over the water, and I'd tell her stories about Gerald. Paul visited every other weekend. He'd bring groceries, help with yard work, and we'd talk. Really talk, the way we hadn't in years. He told me about his therapy, about understanding how he'd learned toxic patterns from watching Monica manipulate situations. about taking responsibility for his own choices. One evening, as we sat by the lake, Paul said quietly, "I can't believe I became the kind of man who abandoned his mother on a dark road." "You also became the kind of man who's working to change," I replied. "That counts for something." "Does it count enough?" I thought about that, watching the sunset paint the water gold. "Ask me in a year." The scholarship fund grew beyond anything I'd imagined. Donations came in from around the county. Other families, moved by the mission, contributed. By autumn, we'd helped 23 students return to school. The Millbrook Gazette did a story about me, calling me the town's quiet hero. They got it wrong, of course. I wasn't a hero. I was just a woman who refused to let betrayal define her, who chose to build something good from something painful. One of the scholarship recipients, a woman named Dorothy, became a friend. She was 65, studying to be a counselor after spending 40 years as a secretary. "You gave me my life back," she told me over coffee one day. I thought it was too late for dreams. "It's never too late," I said. "As long as you're breathing, you can change your story." Paul started volunteering at the Scholarship Center, helping elderly students navigate technology and applications. Watching him work with such patience and respect, I saw glimpses of the boy I'd raised, the man Gerald hoped he'd become. One day, as he was leaving my cottage, he turned at the door. "Mom, thank you for not giving up on me." I squeezed his hand. Gerald never gave up on us. How could I do less for his son? The tears in his eyes matched mine. Winter came again, a full year after that terrible night on Highway 40. I was sitting on my porch, wrapped in blankets, watching snow fall over the lake when Paul's truck pulled up. He'd been doing well, promoted to assistant manager at the hardware store, moved into a better apartment, even started dating a nice woman named Beth who taught 3rd grade. "Hey, Mom," he said, climbing the porch steps with 2 cups of hot chocolate from my favorite cafe. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the way Gerald and I used to do. Finally, Paul spoke. "I've been in therapy for a year now. Dr. Williams says I need to make amends. Not just say sorry, but really show I've changed." He pulled out a folder. "This is the final payment. Everything I owed you with interest." I opened it. A cashier's check for the full amount documented in my notebook, plus 12% interest. My throat tightened. "Paul, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did. You deserved better than what I gave you. You deserve this." He paused. "And I wanted to tell you something else. I went to visit Monica. In prison." My surprise must have shown because he nodded. I needed to understand, to hear her side. And you know what I learned? She had her own story, her own pain. It doesn't excuse what she did, but it helped me understand why I fell for her manipulation. I was looking for someone to fix me, instead of fixing myself. On a bright Sunday morning in May, I asked Paul to drive me somewhere special. We got in his truck and headed down Highway 40, the same route from that night 18 months ago. We drove past the Pinewood Motel, past the spot where Carl found me. Finally, I asked him to pull over. Right there, on the shoulder where they'd left me. We got out and stood looking at the empty road, the trees, the ordinary piece of highway that had changed everything. "This is where I learned who you really were," I said quietly, "and where I learned who I still could be." Paul's voice was thick. "I'm so sorry, Mom. Every day I'm sorry." "I know." I took his hand, feeling the calluses from his honest work. "But you know what? I don't hate this spot anymore. Because that night, I found my strength. I remembered who Gerald raised me to be. I discovered I could save myself." We stood there for a moment longer, then got back in the truck. As we drove away, I looked back at that ordinary stretch of highway one last time. Funny thing, I said, watching it disappear in the side mirror. The road looks kinder in daylight. Paul glanced at me, tears on his cheeks, but a small smile forming. Yeah, Mom. It really does. And as we drove toward home, toward my cozy cottage, toward Sunday dinner, toward a future built on truth instead of lies, I felt Gerald's presence like sunshine on my face. We'd protected his legacy. We'd chosen justice over bitterness. And we'd found our way back to each other, not because forgiveness was easy, but because love, real love, is always worth fighting for. The road behind us faded into memory. The road ahead shone bright with possibility. And that finally was enough.